You will always see this as the day that you almost caught Captain Jack Sinbad. Perhaps a strange source to find inspiration from, but among the most powerful reasons to see Jack Sparrow, the unlikely hero from the Pirates of the Caribbean series, as someone we can learn from, can be seen in the opening scene with the character. As he rides a sinking ship into Port Royal during the start of the first film, Jack acts as the king of all that he surveys. And though we can sense inklings of the delusional and the deranged in him, we believe in him. We believe in him because he believes in himself. And so for today's video, we'll be going over 5 Jack Sparrow quotes from the Pirates of the Caribbean series and the ways we can apply his principles into our own conduct. The first quote is this: "The problem is not the problem is your attitude about the problem." Perhaps the most prevailing inspirational quality of Jack Sparrow is his playful attitude. The playfulness with which he approaches all the scenarios that he encounters himself in the Pirates of the Caribbean series. Jack Sparrow is someone who is mutinized, betrayed, abandoned in life-threatening situations, and yet what attitude does he maintain through all of it? Almost sort of a delusional grandeur, an ease, a creativity, a flow, and almost a party-like quality to him that makes him incredibly attractive, and not only attractive, but incredibly potent in the way he carries himself. There's a quote from the Hindu sages that goes something like this: "Flexibility is life, rigidity is death." Which is to say, the closer you are to being flexible about things, ease, what Bruce Lee called being water, my friend, then the more powerful you are. And if you're too trapped in one line of thinking, being super attached to one result, one way of doing things, the more rigid you are, the more close to death you are. Consider people who you've encountered in your life with the opposite mindset of playfulness. They're extremely rigid, they're trapped to one result, and they're completely grumpy and annoying to be around. If something doesn't work out in their line of thinking and their protocol of working, having such a severe degree of rigidity about the way things should play out, it makes one weak, it makes one less effective, and one thing that Jack does incredibly well, no matter the problem, no matter the circumstance, he's flexible, he's playful, and he maintains a great attitude. The second quote from Pirates of the Caribbean that I absolutely love, and this is a quote that people often neglect, is actually an exchange between Commodore Norrington and Jack Sparrow. Norrington says this: "You are without a doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of." To which Jack Sparrow responds,
"But you have heard of me."
Now, I like this principle especially as someone who is an actor, as a creative, and as an entrepreneur, and many of us can relate to this. We are afraid to put ourselves out there. We're often so attached to the artistry of our result that we would prefer actually not being heard of, not being seen, than being seen in a negative way. Many times actors, musicians, people who have that creative desire within them, they're super trapped by their own psyche, their own thinking, and they think, if I'm gonna put this out there, I don't know if I can do this. When you find yourself trapped by that sort of thinking, remind yourself that it's your imperfections, it's your sharp edges that makes you relatable. And oftentimes the result that you think is so bad, so imperfect, so flawed, it's actually something that people can really connect with. And I absolutely love the fact that Jack Sparrow is thrilled at the fact that Norrington has heard of him. You have heard of me, at least you've got that. He sees that as such a positive thing, and it is a positive thing. We are in some ways living in very strange times. This is the digital era. Having a digital presence and having a sort of portfolio of work that represents you in your professional capacity or whatever capacity that you feel is an expression of yourself, it's not only important and useful for anyone, it's incredibly necessary. Oftentimes the people who are the most amazing at self-promotion are also incredibly obnoxious, and so we think to ourselves, well, I don't want to be like that. And we look down on such people. I'm talking about genius marketers of today, such as the Kardashians, the Paul brothers, all of these people who some of us might instinctively think as less than. They're of a different terrain, a more obnoxious terrain. And yet, if people don't know you, whether you're an actor, a musician, then you might as well not exist in that line of work. It's just a fact of modern times. You've got to be willing to promote yourself. And even if some people might label you as the worst pirate that they've ever heard of, you should be cultivating that sense of being heard of in the first place. And so while this is a very small line within the Pirates of the Caribbean series, I think it's well worth reflecting on. What can you do to promote yourself? What can you do to brand yourself and market yourself? Because if people don't know what you do, then the skills you have, the talents you have, they really have no leverage. It's the knowing that gives you power. The third quote: "Wherever we want to go, we go. That's what a ship is. It's not just a keel and hull and deck and sails. That's what a ship needs. But what a ship is, what the Black Pearl really is freedom. What Jack loves most isn't money, isn't women, although he does love chasing and participating in those things. His greatest love is his ship. That's his purpose. And the ship, the Black Pearl, represents freedom. And this notion of chasing what's truth, what's your purpose, what's your freedom, is really an important thing to remind yourself of on a daily basis. It has been the case numerous times in my life where I thought to myself, if I just gain this one thing, then I'll have it all. I'll get there. I'll have arrived in some capacity. Once I start making X amount of dollars, in the earlier stages of my YouTube channel, getting to 10,000 subscribers, I thought, oh my god, if I get to that number, that'll be way more than I, would ever desire. I mean, I'd never set out to get any subscribers, so the fact that I could get to 10,000 potentially, oh my god, this is gonna be an amazing thing. And then once we hit those objectives, it's insane how quickly the mind is willing to become dissatisfied with those results. And yet we get trapped into this result that isn't actually real. The money is only a representation of something. What you're actually chasing, above all else, is your purpose and your freedom. And Jack Sparrow recognizes this. The ship represents something above all else. It represents his purpose. When he's holding that wheel and he's setting sight on a new ambition, on a new isle that he could go to, a new treasure that he could chase, it's not about the money. It's about being in alignment with what you're meant to do and about having the freedom to chase what gives you excitement. Quote number 4, why fight when you can negotiate? Jack Sparrow is someone who has a profound understanding that having a lot of friction, having a lot of hard work, gritting your teeth through a certain thing, it's not always the right way to go. In fact, Jack Sparrow looks for any opportunity to make things easier, to take the easy path. Now sometimes he does this to an extent that makes him a bit of a scoundrel, a lovable scoundrel, but also he has a real understanding of when to apply grit, virtuoso, vigor, action, and times where he can just find ways to weasel around scenarios that's more easy, that's more free-flowing, and isn't so draining. I think there's a real movement right now towards hustle culture. One of the most popular speakers on YouTube seems to be David Goggins. And what is he famous for? Running 100 miles on his own and breaking all the bones in his feet. I personally find that a little ludicrous. I do have a deep admiration for hard work, hustle, pushing through pain and boring mundane activities to get the results that you want. But life isn't just about being the warrior. Life also has an element of being playful and at times chasing things with ease. There's a book called Power versus Force that I'm a huge fan of. I've talked about it on this channel. And the author basically talks about the two types of activities that you can take on to get work done. Power, which has an elegance, a grace, and an ease that goes into doing things, and so you're not always just gritting your teeth and just chasing down objectives with a maniacal vision, but rather being elegant in the pursuit of things. And then there's force, which is just that hustle mentality of trying to get things done right now. And one thing that Jack Sparrow does beautifully, knowingly or unknowingly, Jack Sparrow always finds ways to do things with ease when he can. And one of my favorite scenes early on in the first movie, when he and Will Turner are trying to get to a ship to basically steal it, they use this boat and they use an air bubble through that rowboat to get to the ship. And so Will Turner says, this is either genius or madness. And Jack Sparrow says, you'll be surprised how often those two things mix together. That sort of thinking, that sort of creative thinking is an indication of what happens when you operate from ease rather than force. You don't always have to use force. Sometimes you can just use negotiation. And the final quote, the seas may be rough, but I am the captain. No matter how difficult, I will always prevail. This line's, of course, a little bit corny and a little harder to act upon, but I think it absolutely captures the swashbuckler mentality of the entire Pirates of the Caribbean series that I absolutely love. Having that feeling of sometimes the waters will get tumultuous. Sometimes things will get rocky. Sometimes things are gonna downright suck. And yet through all that, I can maintain a locus of control. I can be responsible for my own actions and for what happens to me. I can choose to keep the mindset of prevailing. It's a feeling, it's a sentiment, it's an energy that supercharges all of these movies. Of course, the movies that I really grew up on are the first three Pirates movies, but I really love this attitude that prevails In all swashbuckler stories, the idea that sometimes you're down on your luck, sometimes you get scratched in the face, and yet you can still come back from it and you can still face the storm. It's one of the reasons why I love Jack Sparrow, because regardless of how tumultuous the storm is, regardless of how strange and weird and downright terrifying circumstances can get for him, he's always willing to make it a good time. And for those of us who are willing to face the storm and the problems with playfulness, with the suaveness of a swashbuckler, those of us who are willing to put ourselves out there, especially those of you who are actors or musicians or anyone in the creative field, willing to be seen and heard. And lastly, to bring responsibility back to ourselves, to maintain an internal locus of control, and to keep that attitude of, I will prevail over the coming storm. To us I say, greatness is coming. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're new here and you liked it, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.